Greetings, friends. Your cartoonist pal Stan here with a work in progress episode of 50 Years in the Dungeon, the show that I'm doing to celebrate tabletop role playing game and all its related niceties. I've been workshopping some new intros because I've been talking to people to have on as guests who are not necessarily tabletop role playing focused. They've been involved, and I'm actually thinking of a few that aren't at all. There's kind of like computer games and comics and some other things which are in the whole milieu, but aren't exactly tabletop role playing games. And so, if that's what I'm going to do, I'm going to have to come out with a new intro. And now I've just turned this into a really long rambling intro, which doesn't say much of anything. Yes, it's a show where I talk to folks who have worked on the tabletop role-playing games of our youth and current age, and many of whom I worked with at TSR or Wizards or other places. Blasphemy, says Michael. Yeah, well, you cannot tune in for those shows if you want, but I'll think you want to because if I'm picking them, they're people I think are interesting. Um, and while we chat on the show, I will work on a cartoon homage to a classic piece of gaming art. And over the first year plus of the show, or towards the end of the first year plus of the show, I finished. Oh, let me say, I never finished any of the drawings on the show. That's a little too complicated for an hour plus. But I would finish them over the course of the week. Towards the end of the first year, I got a little behind, so that's why I'm doing these work in progress shows. I'm going back to finish up pieces that were begun on an earlier episode. While I do it, I'm inviting friends who've been on the show before, people I like to just hang around and talk to come on and chat in an even more informal way about what's going on in their gaming, their lives, their careers, the world in general. I'm pretty sure we're going to talk a bit about Superman this week. And like that there. So, that is what the show is in a rambling, incoherent fashion. It's hot here in the Seattle area. Hot for anywhere in that it's over 90, but that's very hot for here. The uh, the infrastructure is not built for that. So, if I look a little schwitzy tonight, that's why. But I've got my fan on. I've got my friends here. I've got my drawing tablet over there. I think we're going to have fun. So let me invite in our guest for this week. It's my friend and your friend who's been with us several times before and doesn't like to turn his camera on. Sorry, I didn't mean to throw you under the bus like that. Dale Donovan. Dale, how you doing?
I am fine. I count myself among those blasphemers, Michael. So hey, uh, I'm ready. Let's blaspheme some stuff. I'm ready.
Yeah. So how are you doing, Dale? How are things out in the Midwest? Are they hot like they're hot here? It's hotter
Yeah,
out there often.
it's hot and sticky here, but I think we're going to be getting a front coming through tonight, which should cool things off for a couple of days up in central Wisconsin area. There was some storminess today. Nothing down here in the
Hmm.
southeast corner, but yeah, there were parts of Wisconsin that had some summer storms. So I hope everybody's okay.
Oh, good. And was it a cyclonic summer storm?
Yeah, there were apparently several small cyclonic winds that came down out of the cloud banks and may have touched the ground. I've seen a few short video clips of like areas north of Madison and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know everything exactly, but the weather people were on saying, "All right, this is serious. Take this stuff serious."
Yeah. It's always good.
Mm-hmm.
Blah. Yeah. I've lived a lot of places around the country, around the world, and everywhere has some weather related thing that you have to watch out for.
Hmm.
And I think you kind of grow comfortable with the ones you grew up with.
Very much so, yes.
Yeah, tornadoes freak the hell out of
The, uh, I guess because I was born and raised right here. Um, tornadoes are in the grand scheme of things. Tornadoes tend to be very, very small.
Yeah,
As opposed to like hurricanes. If I were to live in the Florida or the Gulf Coast or something, that would freak me out because oh my god, this is a storm
yeah.
that's 300 miles across.
Then it hits everything in its path.
Yes.
But having grown up in the Northeast, where um, the weekend hurricanes would hit,
Hmm.
I grew up kind of comfy. You saw them coming a week out. And again, because I was not in the South, we even more rarely got them at full strength. So
Hmm.
it was only a couple of times they ever came through and were anything other than power outages and inconveniences.
Hmm.
Um,
My dad was born and raised in this small valley town in Vermont,
good.
and I want to say sometime in the 1930s, uh, uh, hurricane stayed together long enough to deliver quite a wallop to the northeast, including flooding his little valley town you could go into their general store and so forth in the town when I was going there when I was little, and we'd go back there to visit my dad's parents in the summertime. You go downtown, go to the general store and stuff, and you could see the pencil marks on the wall which had marked how high the water had come up get a, during that 1930s hurricane.
Yeah.
And I was probably single digits at that time, and that was like probably as tall, if not taller, than I was. So that's a lot of water.
How do you say it's rained every day since June? Where are you? It's got to be southeast, or the Caribbean, or the South Pacific. Where are you? Rained every day since June. There've been uh, you know hear more about uh, uh,
The
droughts than
Northeast United States, Michael. This is the Northeastern Kingdom. Yeah, the Northeastern United States. Like I said, my dad was born and raised in Vermont, which isn't too far from Upper New York, where you spent a lot of
I
time.
spent a lot of
Right?
time. Yeah. All right, DeBerg. Oh, DeBerg. Really, it's rained every day since June in Pittsburgh. Uh, well, I had no idea. I had no idea. But what? Why would I know that? All right,
Is
let's not stop talking about the weather, but let's start bringing drawing into this as well. We'll come over here. You can see our big pile of drawings and unfinished drawings. Last time I was working on the Monster Manual 2024
woohoo?
version, and I got the inks done, but um, over this past weekend, in fact, the next morning after that show, uh, I festivities began for the weekend marriage wedding of Sean K. Reynolds, our friend Sean Reynolds, and there were a lot of folks who came in from out of town, and I was uh, playing host, supervising, shuttling some people around. I also was the officiant at the wedding, and so I've been doing things related to either the wedding or visitors every day since last Thursday. So I got no further than I did a little after the episode. I did some coloring. So this is where we stand at the moment. I got the
So
inks all done, and black staff is colored, including the special effects, and um, uh, Minsk and Boo are partially colored. What were you going to ask, Dale?
I was going to say something I no longer recall because I was reading chat, and now I
Fair.
don't remember what I was going to say. Michael has said a good friend of his lives in Vermont, in the Northeast Kingdom near Montreal. I've been up there
Oh,
he said he's been up there for leaf peeping season. Uh, my dad was born and raised in Waterbury, which is a very small town between Burlington and Montpelier. Burlington being the largest city and Montpelier being the state capital. A major attraction, or I guess employer, at least 50 years ago when we were going back there, was the local granite mine, and what at the time was a state mental hospital. That complex has since become a huge huge hub of the Vermont state government. Lots and lots of state departments and stuff work out of that same complex now. And something that might be interested, if anybody besides Stan remembers the old Chaosium Call of Cthulhu card game called Mythos.
oh yeah.
There was a card in the Mythos game that depicted the Waterbury State Mental Hospital in Waterbury, Vermont, which was literally down the street from where the house where my dad grew up, and of course where we stayed with his parents when I was little. If we want to get around to it at some point, I may have told this story already. I don't know. I'll tell this tale of the terrifying night I spent in that house, knowing an inmate from that hospital had just escaped.
I mean, it's not really funny, but that's funny. It's like an episode of a TV show.
Yep, that's exactly what I was afraid was going to happen. And of course, nothing like that happened. But that still freaked me out. Man, I was watching TV which was watching TV. I was the only one down in the room. I think everyone else had gone to bed upstairs. And there was a big bay window in the living room that fronted the street.
Right.
And whatever show was on, they interrupted with a news bulletin from Burlington, because that's the big city. That's where all the TV stations were. We just been informed that an inmate from the Waterbury State Mental Hospital in Waterbury, Vermont, has escaped. Be on the lookout.
Oh my God! That's. You'd think that it having been such a TV trope, they'd have done it a little better than that.
And of course, I'm in this mostly darkened room, largely illuminated only by the by the cathode rays of the TV screen, not too far from a big bay window. And I just had I got to look out the window to make sure there's nobody looking back at me.
Right.
But of course, at the same time, part of me didn't want to look. So
because there might be someone looking back.
Somebody looking back at me. So the way I remember it was, I did that slow TV, horror movie, sort of slowly panning my eyes over there, slowly panning my eyes over there. Is there gonna be oh, there's nobody there. Okay.
See, I thought you were going to see, and I saw someone looking back at me, but it was my reflection in the window.
Yeah, no, I wasn't sitting in that. I wasn't sitting that close to the window, or wasn't lined up that appropriately. But obviously, that incident made an impression, since I'm regaling you with that story 50 years later.
You know what? I just made another discovery about how hot it is here.
How hot is it?
It's so hot that I had to put on my drawing glove, because my whole hand is so hot that when I put it on there, it was just the screen was not reacting well at all. I know a lot of digital artists like to use these all the time. I don't. I find that they don't help me that much, except in situations like this, where I would have to have stopped drawing if I didn't have one of these.
Understood. Yeah, you got to do what you got to do, Stan. And Michael says, yeah, that's Waterbury, as I described, is about an hour and a half from Newport, where his friend lives. So, yes, it's a beautiful area, beautiful part of the country. And I don't know if it's still true, but one of the little facts I remember from our yearly visits back to Vermont when I was a wee lad was there are no billboards in the state of Vermont.
Really?
They don't want, they don't, yes, they are against the law. They don't want any billboards mucking up the views.
Oh, I guess. I guess I see that. It's a nice view.
Hmm. Like I said, I don't know if that's still true, but that it was at least for a time.
That does seem like the kind of thing like they might that Vermont would keep. They're second only to New Hampshire in kind of snooty New Englandness.
Or as you know, the my dad, were he still around, and other people from there might say, Yankee individuality.
Yeah, that's that. Isn't that what I said?
Yes, that is what you said.
Exactly what I said. Um, yeah. Same.
Hmm. And I used to occasionally get mocked by the people, the other. There were kids in the in the neighborhood that but very often my cousin and I would go. My dad and his brother, and cousin Glenn was a couple of years older than me, but we'd go and we'd hang out with the local kids, and occasionally Glenn, who grew up outside of Chicago, would get teased for our Midwestern accents, and we're like, "What accents? We don't have accents. You guys are the ones who are
You
talking
guys are the
funny."
ones who sound like yokels. I mean, have accent.
And I'm sure they talk about the Maine accent, and of course the Boston accent and stuff, but I don't know if I could uh, you know describe or vocalize a New Hampshire, Vermont, Upper New York accent. I don't know where that would fall.
Yeah, it's get to northern New York. It's kind of just a little nasally.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. He said he has a whole Google photo album of his time in Vermont. Yeah, I would very much like to receive that link from you, Michael. Thank you.
So hey, I mean, I mentioned it in the thing. Did you? And I didn't ask you, Ryan. Have you? Did you see this new Superman yet, or no?
Not yet, but don't let that hold you up. If you guys want to talk about it, I've got the general gist. I watched parts of spoiler reviews,
Right.
up to a certain point. So I know the basic premise. I think I know the major plot points. I know the end credit scene, you know, but Cindy and I haven't had the time to get to the theater yet.
All right. Well, I mean, I'm just as happy to because I went in. I went in kind of like you. I did not avoid the spoilers. I never do because I don't go to see things soon enough. And I had some opinions and some fears and some hopes. And in the end, I came out and I thought that was just a good movie. Yeah, there are problems. There all it's not a perfect movie, but it was just as I had hoped it would be. A return to a Superman movie where you can feel good about the what's going on,
Hmm. Yes.
and that in itself is, I think, a pretty big achievement.
Yeah, I was very excited seeing some of the uh, character choices that James Gunn made for the movie. Uh, Mr. Terrific was
Yeah.
a great actor. I will never be able to pronounce his name, but he was in X-Men First Class,
Hmm.
the Hawk Girl, and of course the perfect casting of Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner. The Green Lantern you love to hate, and of
I
course the fact that Crypto's in there too. That's pretty awesome as well. No Legion, not the rest of the Legion of Super Pets, But hey, there are sequels. He can do that if he wants to.
so I mean, one of to kind of talk about it without actually needing to do specific spoilers. Um, you touch on that. They've Gunn has gone and reintroduced a lot of things to DC, that some of which had never been in the movies at all, but
Mm-hmm.
come out of the comics tradition. Um, and it's it's interesting to me thinking about it, how he's reset the feeling for the DC cinematic universe, but some of the questions that it poses, like it skips over a lot of it skips over a lot of things that it could have spent time uh, being very expositional about, with just a couple of quick lines at the opening, right? 3,000 years ago, this happened. 300 years ago, this happened. 30 years, and
Right.
kind of set the stage. This is the world we live in. Um, but having done that and having introduced the Guy Gardner and Hawk Girl and Terrific, I was going to say Mr. Fantastic, but that's another movie that's opening soon. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there's some questions that it leaves open, particularly given what happens in the world in the movie. Of okay, we know that this is a world where superheroes are around. We know Superman has been an active superhero for 3 years. They tell us in the opening crawl. Um, so it leaves a lot of questions of all right. So what does this mean for some of the other really big shakers in the DC universe?
Mm-hmm.
Why, if this is a world where Wonder Woman is part of what's going on, why would that not have come up at some point? Right? If this is a world where Batman exists, which, well, first of all, the open question we've been wondering since this whole thing began: which Batman is it going to be? Where is he going to fall on the line between Adam West and Frank Miller's Dark Knight?
Uh-huh.
And is he going to be a friendly neighborhood Batman, a Gotham Batman, or is he going to be a Super Friends Batman?
Mm-hmm.
And not that this story needed any more to complicate it, but if they're going to introduce him and make him a Super Friends Batman, then the question is, well, where the hell was he during this? Um, but that's big time nerd question. Like at this
Yes.
point, I'm not worried about going, well, what's going on? But I am. It makes me curious. What they've clearly got plans.
Right.
Um,
And Gunn, I think, didn't want to, you know, put anything in stone
yeah, for a
in
movie
this
that
film.
hasn't even
And when
begun shooting.
he's also declared that no project will be even announced until they have a completed approved script.
Right.
You know, so you can't necessarily say anything about Wonder Woman or Batman or stuff, without committing yourself to something you don't even have, maybe not even have a pitch for yet.
Right.
you know. And as Michael in chat points out, yeah, the current Matt Reeves Batman too.
Yeah.
Is it, is it going to be Robert Pattinson? Is it going to be Michael Keaton? Is it going to be, yeah, or is it going to be
I think
somebody
we're
new?
probably clear it's not going to be Michael Keaton.
Or he and George Clooney did both show up on the Flash, but I,
Yeah.
I know that's no longer the current DC cinematic universe, and that's fine with me. But and so seeing
And that's fine with me too.
And having
Um,
seen, Gunn do the Guardians of the Galaxies films and the Suicide Squad film, you know, it seems he loves the little C-list guys, and
yeah,
fleshing them out and making them into primary players. And of course, the one that I haven't even mentioned yet is Metamorpho. It was like, oh my god,
yeah.
Metamorpho is going to be in a movie. That is so cool because again, he's not an A-lister.
No, it was interesting. I did not know that. I don't know if that was a. I missed that in the spoilers. So when he showed up, then I'm like, oh wow, that's a deep cut to just kind of throw in there,
Mm-hmm.
and it worked really well.
Yeah.
Um, did you see the announcement today that Gunn made? Was it today? I just saw it today that there's going to be a Supergirl movie in next year.
Yeah, yes, I knew of this. Yeah, it's been cast and it's based on the comic book storyline Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, and that's probably the name of the film too. I think, at least right now it is.
I guess I
Um,
don't know.
there was a particular arc of a recent Supergirl comic that took place not on Earth, but in a more futuristic, maybe even science fictional type world, and that was the storyline that was going to be adapted for the film. That is the extent of my knowledge, and I certainly could be wrong in at least some
Yeah.
of those details. Yeah, Michael points out, yeah, that's been in production for a while. So,
Um, and again, not to avoid doing anything particularly spoilery, I thought that while her appearance in this film was cool and answered one of the questions that had been kind of floating around there, it also opened up a lot of other questions that they didn't even. I mean, they didn't even have half a second to worry about, but they're kind of, you know, from someone who makes his living as a world building person.
mm,
Well, what? But if then,
yes, back to the basic computer coding language. If then.
yeah.
And as Michael points out, apparently Jason Momoa is going to be Lobo in this new universe.
Oh God.
So,
I
in
will admit,
Supergirl.
I hate Lobo.
Yeah, so do I. But but Mr. Momoa does have a superheroic level of charm.
Yep.
So he
And who knows how they're going to interpret him?
exactly.
There could be a Lobo I liked, and
Uh-huh.
Jason Momoa could very well be that Lobo.
Exactly. Yes.
That wasn't supposed to happen.
There you go. That's better.
That is better. Um,
So if you don't mind my asking, Stan,
I
what
don't mind at all.
did you have a comic or Richard Donner, Christopher Reeve relationship with Superman in your youth, or was he not so much on your radar at that time?
Did did I have a relationship with?
With Superman, either
Oh,
in the comics.
yeah. No, I liked the original Richard Donner. I really liked. I never had been a big fan of Superman in the comics for anything more than individual stories. I think it's just too hard to tell the kind of ongoing stories that I liked in the Marvel universe or in Batman. It just Superman is too problematic a character to tell long term continuity because he can do everything because he's the very
Mhm.
definition of a Mary Jane, right?
Right.
Except they care, right? He's not done unthinkingly that way, but he is Superman, and the
Mhm.
more you try and give him problems that to create a compelling narrative, compelling ongoing human narrative, the more silly it, I think, inevitably has to get. My favorite Superman was the animated they did. One of my favorite Supermans was the animated they did just after the Batman animated in the '90s. I think he's a
Yes.
really good cartoon character.
Hmm. Okay.
um,
Yeah, yeah, I
yeah,
grew up with loving the Christopher Reeve movies 1 and 2, as Michael points out in the chat.
yeah.
I don't know if I ever saw 3, and I know I certainly didn't see 4.
I've seen them all. I have seen
With
them all.
okay, growing up, yeah, I didn't read Superman as a comic. I DC at the time. I was more Legion of Superheroes, and maybe if you go back a little bit, Superboy in the Legion of
Yeah,
Superheroes. But the main DC continuity at the time, I was reading the Green Arrow, Green Lantern arcs where they were trucking across America.
yeah.
I can't think of the
With
title.
Denny O'Neil
Yes,
and Adams, Neil Adams.
Neil Adams. Yes, yep. But yeah, that animated show was very good. Um, like you said, I also enjoyed his appearances in the Justice League
Yeah,
cartoons,
yeah.
especially Justice League Unlimited, because I was I was always dying as a kid. I was dying for more superheroes, more,
Right,
and to some degree that's still with me today. So when they went from the animated first season Justice League, with just there's the 6 or 7 normal characters, and they went to the Justice League Unlimited, and they brought in everybody. I was
right.
like, oh, I'm so happy. It's like my favorite years of the old Super Friends show with the Legion of Doom seasons. Because you
I
got
remember the very first Super Friends.
I remember Marvin and Wendy and the
Yeah,
dog, and then later they did the Wonder Twins.
yeah.
Yeah, but no, I remember Marvin and Wendy. Yeah, they were, and the dog. I liked them. I
But
wasn't a fan of the one.
did you ever see before that in the '60s? They'd done a bunch of kind of like the Marvel ones that were
The limited
that had
animation
that
Marvel
yeah.
ones.
But DC had done ones that had better animation and were not just adaptations of the comics, and they did them for a bunch of characters. Like they were all 7 to 8 minute shorts,
Mm.
and they put together the Batman had one, Superman had one, but Adam had his own series, and Green Lantern had his own series, and they were. I've gone back and watched some of them since, and not that long ago, and they weren't really any good. But I saw growing up,
Mhm.
so those were my first introductions to them. So when the Super Friends came along, even as a kid, I was like, no, I want the serious ones.
Yeah, no, I don't. I have no memory of those DC cartoons that you described.
You should look
Uh,
them up. They are Ted Knight does the voices of a lot of characters in them.
okay, well, yeah, he did some of this. He was, it was him and
Yeah,
Casey Kasem doing voices in the Super Friends era and
yeah,
stuff too.
yeah. No,
Right.
it's that same voice group
Okay.
was doing those old DC ones. Yeah. Meanwhile, in the halls of justice.
Yes, exactly. And of course, if we're talking about Superman animation, go back to the '40s Fleischer cartoons. That's amazing
Right. Oh
animation.
yeah, 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 yeah. And we're talking about going that back that far. I also grew up watching reruns of the black and white Superman TV show. Um,
Okay, George Reeves.
with George Reeves, yeah, and that was another one where I immediately Even as a kid, before really understanding why, I'm like, all right, well, this doesn't make any sense. Like, he's Superman. It's all of these stories are him fighting gangsters.
Yeah,
Why isn't he fighting a supervillain? Because they couldn't possibly have filmed that in the 50s. Why does he
exactly.
duck whenever like he stands there? That was my favorite part about him. He'd stand there with his hands on his hips when they were shooting him, and special effects would have bullets bouncing off his chest, and then they'd throw the gun and he'd duck.
Yeah. Yeah. If the bullets didn't hurt you, the revolver's not going to
That's
hurt
right.
you either.
Clunk. Ow!
Michael in chat asks, did we ever see, either of us ever see the cable show called Video Comics that opened with the Ride of the Valkyries music where they would pan across the panels and narrate them? No, I never saw that.
No, I never saw that. I never heard of that.
No, me either. What I was referring to with the Marvel stuff was the limited animation ones where they like cut like Spider-Man or Iron Man or something out of a
Right,
out
and
of a
everyone had their own wonderful theme song.
yes. They would cut Iron Man or Spider-Man out of a panel and just move his figure across a flat mat background.
Right.
For
Well, I mean, they
web
were
sling
basically what
or something.
they were basically what we called motion comics these days.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It was a comic panel with one thing cut out so it could move, or the mouth would go abba 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 abba.
Yes. Which I still like. I still preferred that kind of animation for the vocals versus the horrible freak me out clutch cargo animations where everything is a flat image except the mouth, which is a real mouth superimposed on this cartoon face, and it's like, oh my god.
Those are super funny to see. But yes, we're terrifying as a kid.
It's like it's a cartoon, so I kind of want to watch it, but I'm deeply disturbed at the same time.
But it's so cheap.
Yeah, I seem to remember. Again, this is a product growing up here where I did. For decades there was a kids morning show on WGN, and I guess it was a superstation back then, so it might have gotten around the country. But it was the Ray Rayner show, and he had overalls on, and there was usually there's maybe some puppets that might be confusing that with the Garfield Goose show, which was puppet, which had a lot of puppet work in it. But he would do crafts, and they'd get baby animals from the zoo, and he'd show some cartoons,
Aw.
and I know, and I remember Clutch Cargo was one of the battery of cartoons, that they would go. They'd do a live segment and then go to a cartoon,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Oh, the good old days when you had to watch whatever they put on.
Yeah, when it was, we were kind of lucky, again, being where I am, located between Milwaukee and Chicago. Whereas, if I were in either one of those cities, there would have been, like the 3 TV stations, the 3 networks, maybe the PBS station, and maybe an independent station or 2 up in the UHF band.
Yeah.
Well, we are positioned close enough that we could get pretty much 90% at 90% of the time, all the broadcast stations from Milwaukee and from Chicago.
Nice.
So we had like 10, 11, maybe, we probably had 10 or 11 stations to watch, plus a couple in the UHF channel, the UHF band, which would come in and out, depending on the weather and the time of year and stuff. But it was those UHF channels, especially the ones in Chicago, channel 32 WFLD and channel 44, which I can't remember the call signs for anymore, that introduced me to so much of nerddom. Those limited animation motion comics, Marvel
Yeah,
stuff that we were just
yeah.
talking about. That was Channel 32. Ultraman was on Channel
Oh,
32.
and
Speed Racer was on Channel 32, and some of these could have been on Channel 44 too. I just seem to remember them all as being on 30. Speed Racer, um, and a lot of the older cartoons that weren't on Saturday mornings anymore. But they
yeah.
were, they were still extant and out there in syndication and stuff like the animated Star Trek show.
Hmm. I, having grown up in the New York metro area, I mean, we just always had 10 stations. Plus, as you say, some UHF stuff from Connecticut and New Jersey.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Michael posted in chat. He uh, said just found it on a quick Google search. I believe he's talking about his Ride of the Valkyries video comics thing. First aired on QUBE, a precursor to cable, and then aired on Nickelodeon from 79 to 81.
Wow.
Diane Disk or Diskey, William Hamilton, and Charles Pickard provided voices.
I have no memory of that. I have to look that up.
Yeah, me too. So anyway, like I was saying, the UHF channels, had a big impact on my young nerddom, and that, and the fact that by this point, the classic show MASH was in syndication,
Yeah.
and we all, my sisters and I, loved it. I don't know if my parents, cared that much about it, but it was in syndication on a Milwaukee station and a Chicago station, and for the
Yeah.
period of time at which I can remember, they weren't broadcast at the same time. Now I don't know if they planned it this way or not, but they didn't. You didn't have to choose. Like I want to say, the Milwaukee channel had an episode of MASH at like 5 p.m. and then 10:30 p.m. and they would be different
Yeah.
episodes, different
Yeah.
points in the run. And then the Chicago station had an episode at 5:30 and at 10 p.m. So from 5 to 6, we'd watch 2 episodes of MASH, and from 10 to 11, and this was weekdays, so it was 5 days a week. We'd watch an hour of MASH. So we watched 2 hours of MASH a day.
Every day. Yeah. No. Same thing. Same because this required a UHF for me, but our Channel 5 in New York. WOR. No, it's WOR. Can't even remember what they were. Channel 5, anyway, had MASH at kind of what you were talking about, like 7 and 11. And then this channel at a New Haven had it at 7:30 and 11:30. And so 2 hours of MASH a night. And then on whatever night, usually in my memory, Monday, but whatever night MASH was on for the week, there was 2.5 hours of MASH.
You're right. It was on Monday nights at like 8:30 Central Time. It was, and recently, with all these old shows being available again now on Hulu and other things like that. I don't know if MASH is on Hulu or if it's on Paramount or so, but it's on one of them. And very often, when I'm working, I just want something something pleasant, as a background noise.
Yeah.
While I'm working, and so I will put MASH on the TV in the other room, and just let it play, and during breaks in the workday or whatever, oh, I remember this scene, and realized recently, being exposed to all of these in large chunks again, how much of my sense of humor and of my sense about humor and of humor and being funny directly from that show.
Yeah.
However funny I am or am not, you blame the writers and the cast of MASH.
We were having a conversation about it a few weeks ago because our friend Janice, John's wife Janice,
Hmm.
had either hadn't watched MASH growing up or had watched very little of it, and so she went back and watched it. Like, just went to the beginning and started watching it. Which, I mean, I don't know. Thankfully, I had done about 10 years ago. I watched everything. I've got someone gave me the DVD set as the complete
Hmm.
MASH, so I've watched from season 1 through season 11 or 12, whichever it
Hmm.
was,
It was
and
11.
um, that show then it becomes a different show every 2 years.
Yes.
And you go back and start with the first season, and those are not nice people.
No.
And
Well, it's like in the movie.
yeah,
There is Radar is the only nice person in that
yeah,
film, and even he's kind of a dick, you know.
yeah,
Which
um,
again carried over into the early some other like the first couple of seasons of the show, where yeah, Hawkeye, I'm sorry, Radar is not this naive farm boy. He's like a slickster. You know, he knows how the army works. You know, and he's the one and he's smart enough. He runs that whole camp. You know,
yeah,
because of course. McLean Stevenson's character is no help, but there are scenes in those first couple of seasons when the characters come into McLean Stevenson's character, whose name I can't think of right now,
Henry,
burst into
like,
the Henry Blake. Yes, there it is. Burst into Henry Blake's room, and Radar's sitting behind his desk with his feet up, smoking a cigar, drinking his scotch.
yeah,
You know, and by like season 5, there's no way Radar would ever have done anything like that. You know,
yeah.
but
But
you're
I
right.
mean,
It
but Hawkeye
reinvented
and
itself
Trapper
a
in
lot.
those first 2 seasons are just jerks. Right?
Yeah,
They are
you feel kind of
rebelling
bad for
against
Frank. And
authority, no matter how much sense it makes.
yeah, I mean, there are times in those, where I felt kind of bad for Frank
Yeah,
because the way
yeah,
he
no,
was picking on
you're
him.
talking about Frank is almost in some instances. Are we supposed to root for him? Because
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's a dingleberry, but he's not actively malicious. He's just he's just latched onto this whole military discipline thing
yeah,
because he's been crapped on his whole life, and he's finally got some power, and he's not going to let it go. But yeah, it's like, oh. And of course, I didn't know it at the time growing up, but how much, and this is no discredit to, Alan Hall is an amazing actor, amazing director, writer, everything. I idolized Alan Hall for a long
yeah,
time.
yeah,
Um, you know, in there, especially in those first handful of seasons, there is a lot of Groucho Marx in Hawkeye Pierce.
there's a lot of Groucho Marx. There's, I mean, the other thing is it's horribly misogynistic. I mean, it's
Yes.
terribly
Oh,
misogynistic. Um, but again, the show grows out of that, it,
mm-hmm.
and by the end, it still, by modern standards, hasn't reached the enlightenment you would hope, but it certainly has grown by leaps and bounds. Um,
Yes. Michael in chat points out he got to appear in a TV movie with Harry Morgan and got to have lunch with Colonel Potter. I
yeah,
am so jealous.
nice.
I mean, Harry Morgan had an amazing career,
It sure did.
before he got on MASH. But yeah, and again, part of that, I think, part of that recycling was the fact that some of the cast was turning over. You know,
Yes,
um,
but I mean, they when they replaced them, they didn't replace them with clones. They uh,
exactly. They,
uh, they they advanced what was going on there. Right? They didn't replace Frank with another moron. They replaced him with someone pointedly that could go toe to toe with Hawkeye intellectually and be an equal and a real foil for him.
yes, I remember seeing some of the 40th 30 or 40th anniversary things where they were talking to some of the producers and the writers, and that was one of the goals. But I don't remember if Larry Linville wanted to leave, or if the producers just wanted a more formidable foil for Hawkeye, and by that time, BJ, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that no, and so they went out and cast David Ogden Stiers as Winchester. Winchester,
I,
and yeah, and McLean Stevenson. I remember his story. He was they were at some point while he was still alive. He was asked, "Why did you leave MASH?" And he said, "Because I listened to the wrong people."
yeah.
He said, there were people around me who told me MASH was a hit because of me, and I should have my own show. And I wouldn't, and it wouldn't be an ensemble. It would be the McLean Stevenson show, and I'd get more money, and and I listened to those people, and it turned out that was wrong. I remember a couple of post MASH sitcoms that McLean Stevenson led, and they didn't go anywhere. Like Hello Larry.
Hello Larry. I was about to say, who remembers Hello Larry?
And and so he was like, I listened to the wrong people. I had a good thing going, and I couldn't see it. And Wayne Rogers, who played Trapper,
Yeah.
as I understand it, again from these behind the scene things, he never had a written contract for the show. They just said, all right, well, when the show is starting, come on, do the show. We'll pay you this much. And he's like, yeah, okay, fine. And he did that for 3 years. And by the end of that third year, Wayne Rogers realized this is not the Hawkeye and Trapper show. This is the Hawkeye show.
Yeah.
I'm the sidekick. And I don't know if I want to be the sidekick.
Yeah.
Especially for, whatever money I'm making, that I agreed to 3 years ago, with a handshake, and now this show's a huge hit. Maybe I should, go do something else. And of course, he went off and did House Calls, and had some other successes in TV. But yeah, he didn't have a contract, and he was like, yeah, I'm Hawkeye's sidekick, and I don't really want to be that. So he left, and as you said, not a clone. We got BJ Honeycutt, who was a very different character. And I think, as you were saying earlier, how some of the characters who were there evolved over time.
Yeah.
I think BJ, being the nice, laid back California guy, really turned the tone of the show, and Hawkeye's character as well, because they had to bring Hawkeye back a little bit, not being quite so mean, because Frank was gone, and you couldn't get away with, and Winchester wouldn't let you get away with some of the stuff that they got away with Frank, and you had this objectively nice guy. So
right.
in Mike Farrell's playing BJ, that Hawkeye can't be too much of a dick, or he'll look like a dick compared to BJ.
Well, I mean, yes, and another thing that they got in reinventing. I mean, one of the problems that Trapper had was that he and Hawkeye were essentially the same character. There was not enough light between them, and
Mhm.
Alan Alda clearly was the popular one, which is how he fell into that sidekick role. He was just second Hawkeye.
Yeah.
And by bringing in BJ and saying, okay, who can we put in who's not who can be Hawkeye's friend, but is not Hawkeye Jr.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Adam, welcome to the chat.
Hello, Adam. We're talking old TV. This turned into the MASH rerun show.
MASH analysis. MASH analysis.
MASH analysis. Yeah.
And of course, if we're talking about character arcs with MASH, we can't not talk about the best character arc, not just on the show, maybe one of the best character arcs ever. Margaret Houlihan.
Yeah, yeah. There's going
She
personally, if
was
you look at not just the show, but who that character was from the movie into the show through to the end of the show. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
that I agree. Absolutely the best character arc and one of the best in TV
Yeah,
history.
and Loretta Swit did such a good job. I mean, obviously she could do more than just the one type. I remember she was in the TV movie of the original TV pilot of Cagney and Lacey.
Oh, really?
She she was the Sharon Gless character.
Huh.
It was Nine Daly and Loretta Swit, and it was just TV movie of the week. Back maybe there was I don't know if they thought it was if they planned it to be a pilot or whatever, but it was a TV movie of the week, and boom, it hits it. It's big. It's pretty popular. Hey, we might pick this up for a series. Yeah, well, Loretta Swit's doing MASH.
Huh.
She can't start. She can't be in 2 weekly shows, especially one that's probably shot in California and the other shot in New York. So Sharon Gless took over the role for the TV series.
I'm sure Loretta Swit wasn't too heartbroken. Probably a little.
No, probably a little. Yeah, it would have been nice to do something different. But
Did you ever
yeah,
see
getting to be
there?
on one of the most. Go ahead.
No, no, go ahead. You finish yours because I'm about to shift it a little.
Okay, I was just gonna say, well, being one of the best characters on one of the best TV shows ever. Yeah,
Yes,
I think she did okay.
not a bad thing to be on your resume. She was in a movie called Beer, just Beer. Did you ever see Beer?
I don't believe I ever saw that. No.
But it's not a very good movie.
Really? With that
Yeah,
title, I'm surprised.
but it had some absolutely classic things, which makes it something that you should see. Um,
Okay.
so it's the story is about these this beer company, this independent beer company that's can't is not selling anything. They need to make a splash somehow. They're just getting their teeth kicked in by all the majors, and Loretta Swit is a marketing person, and she hires Rip Torn to come in. He's a director he's gonna make stuff. He's gonna make commercials that are gonna put them on the map, and that seems funny enough. But the thing they do, they're trying to figure out what it is. There's a real life incident, not real life, but they're watching their TV, and these three down on their luck guys who've just been laid off, and they're at a bar in the middle of the afternoon, and someone comes in to rob the bar, and they have just had enough, and so uh, they take care of the robbers and save the bar, and it makes big news.
Mm-hmm.
And they're drinking this company's beer. Why? Because it's the cheapest beer. It's the only one. It's the day drinking beer. But Rip Torn gets this, and he's going to turn them into working class heroes. And so the actual plot of what's going on in the movie, God, I actually don't remember most of it. But there is a series of TV commercials in the vein of the old Miller Lite commercials about these guys and who they are and what they represent. And every time something goes wrong for them, because things keep going wrong for them, they turn it into another new great thing for them in the ads. And it's the commercials, the beer commercials themselves are worth the rest of the hour and a half of crap.
Oh, okay. Two things I was going to say. Michael points out in the chat that back in the series finale on MASH, that Loretta Swit wrote Margaret's speech to, farewell speech to her nurses.
Oh,
That seems to be something that, obviously Alan Alda wrote a lot over the years, and I think Stiers probably wrote some stuff, at least for his own character. And I think they might have even, some of the other characters might have actually been in the director's chair once or twice. I know Alan Alda did a
Yeah.
lot of that stuff later on in the run. But the other thing I was going to ask about is back on that beer movie. Would that make a good double feature with Strange Brew?
Um,
Or is that too much?
no, it's a bad movie. Strange Brew is actually funny.
Yeah,
This,
Strange
this
Brew is a fine film.
so yeah, I would watch Beer first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yes. You always watch the lesser first. Yes, always end on a high end. Yeah.
But yeah, you could put those together and have a fine evening of beer themed movie viewing.
Perhaps enjoying one or two during the course of the teleplays as well.
It would only be
If you are if you are of such a mind.
Personally, I don't like beer, so I wouldn't. But it certainly seems like a good idea even to me.
Yes. Yeah. It's certainly
Right.
an acquired taste. It's but and of course now with the craft movement and so forth, there are so many kinds of carbonated beer-like beverages
Yeah.
that it's almost hard to not find some you like. I respect your
You know what I
statement
like?
saying you don't
I like
it.
cider. I
There you go.
so yeah. I don't like hops. I don't like anything. And American beer is really hoppy. Right?
Mm-hmm.
The only beers I've ever been able to drink and uh, drink pleasantly have been stouts and other things that are more chocolatey than hoppy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, more malty. Yeah.
Yeah, and even that, I'm not a big malt fan either. But if you put enough of it together, it tastes like chocolate, and then that'll drown out my.
Yes, yeah. The malty does. Yeah, malt can have some chocolate flavor tones, especially if you grew up like I did drinking chocolate malts. So
Right. Yeah, I can't. I hate, but if you mix malt and chocolate, I can't stand it. I don't like the malt. I hate malt balls. But
oh, okay.
in place of a beer, yeah, malt's okay.
Yeah, Michael points out that you've moved on a little bit, but Boo is looking quite vicious. Perhaps the most vicious he's ever been depicted.
Yeah, no,
And
he's a little fuzzy in the picture,
yeah, he is.
but in his heart, I know this is what he wants to be.
Yes, exactly. The heart of a warrior. And Michael has also picked up our beer thing. He's saying he likes dark beers. Yes, I too. I enjoy beers across the color spectrum, but yes, I've very often pointed out in like family circles that I'm drinking darker beer than a lot of the other beer drinkers in my family who tend to drink very mainstream, major brewery beers. Of course, being so close to Milwaukee, that's perhaps understandable.
Yeah,
And I enjoy a lot of those too. But I have a broad spectrum of tastes. However, like you, Stan, draw the line. It can't be too hoppy. India Pale Ales and all that stuff. And I have a friend who says, "Oh, there are so many different kinds of India Pale Ale that I could find some that you like." And it's like, oh, if they're hoppy, I'm not going to like them. And thus far, that's been my experience. Is that India, in particular, due to the process that it's made under, India Pale Ale is very hoppy, and I
yeah,
don't like that sharpness. That's like the worst aspect of beer. Okay, I know there's got to be some there, but I enjoy some color in my beer. I like a nice malty beer, like Michael pointed out, stouts, porters. There was when after I left Wizards and come back to the Midwest,
mm,
I was working at the corporate headquarters for the Kohl's Department Stores Corporation, doing editing and project management and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And my family and I, we lived in a little town north of where the corporate headquarters was. The corporate headquarters was in Menominee Falls, which is in northwest corner of Waukesha County, which is just west of Milwaukee itself. We were across the county line in Washington County, I think, in the town Germantown. We had an apartment in a complex there. Danny, our daughter, did a nice chunk of her growing up in that apartment complex, in Germantown.
Mm-hmm.
Most of her elementary school, education was in Germantown, and a couple of blocks away from the apartment complex, there was the nice Germantown restaurant. It was a German themed restaurant, but they also had steaks. So so it was like, it was if you want to go there and get some schnitzel, because you're in Germantown, you go to this restaurant. But they also did steaks and ribs and stuff. And they had a tiny parking lot because this was literally in downtown Germantown, which was like, these buildings are just a little bit bigger and closer together than the rest of the town. Across the very small parking lot, there was a house that had been converted into a tavern.
Okay.
And it was owned by the same people that owned the restaurant. And it was on the way home from a D&D group that I was playing in at the time. I believe this was 4th edition era. And so I'd leave the people's house and drive home, and I'd have to drive right past this tavern, or Bierstube, as they called it, because of course Germantown. I would stop in there, and they always had a couple of standard beers on tap, and then they had a couple more on tap that would rotate, and then of course they had tons of imported beer from
Right.
Primarily Germany, but all across Eastern Europe, and even all around the world. Japanese beer, Taiwanese beer, Indonesian beer. Okay, yeah, I'll try one of those. But the whole point of this story was to tell you that it was in that little beer stube. In one of the things they had on tap for a while was a black lager.
Okay.
So it was a very dark beer, but it was a lager. It tasted a lot lighter than it looked. It wasn't a porter, it wasn't a stout, it wasn't heavy, it wasn't thick, it wasn't one of these, I like a good beer you can chew. This was probably more substantive than a regular lager, but it went down real easy, and it had flavor, and it wasn't too hoppy. And to this day, I look around when I go to a restaurant or go to the grocery store. Does anybody got a black lager? And I think this was actually an imported German beer that was, and I didn't.
Lager Schwarze.
Yes, I didn't realize a lager could be black, but it was like, okay, I'll try it, and I fell in love.
I fell in love. Dale's got a girlfriend. Dale's got a
Michael says, "Yep, there you go." I'm sorry. Michael says he loves black and tans. Yep, I enjoy those too. When microbrews hit in the '90s, a Saranac black and tan was great. Yeah, most of the black and tans I've had were usually like Guinness and Harps, or Guinness something.
All right, what am I going to do? I want to take all this and I want to make it into one big group.
All right, yeah. Let's see all the work you've been doing, Stan. While I've been nattering away, you've been working diligently.
That's the point. Well, look how much I got done. So I'd had the flats done on those, and now they're all got the shading on them.
Right.
These are our heroes. And I put them in one big group so I can turn them on and off, and just like that. Because next I'm going to come and I'm going to work on our villains? Our monsters? These eyes, I'm really worried about how I'm going to try and get something like those. I'll figure it out.
Yeah, I think we had all those previous occasion I was online with you when you were doing the DMG, and I commented on something in particular, some particular aspect of the art on the cover of the DMG, and you said, "Yeah, that's a very painterly thing,"
Yeah,
and I can see lots of painterly things
yeah.
inside the eyes there of the
Once
beholder.
once you start working in line art, it becomes hard to get
Mhm.
that kind of effect. Well, I mean, you know what? With today's someone who's a really good digital colorist, who specializes in coloring, I bet they wouldn't even blink twice. But
Mhm.
I'm a uh, I color like I'm still working on cell animation from the 80s, 70s, and
Mhm.
80s, and that's what I like. I mean, that's my style. Uh, but that does have its own built-in limitations and challenges.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't know if it had. Addressing Michael's question in the chat, I don't know if it had caramel in it to turn it black. It might have. And Michael says, of course, his local favorite is Young Ling.
Oh, Youngling.
Yep, that's a very tasty beverage. And I'm guessing that is that brewed in Pittsburgh?
It's in Pencil. It's a Pennsylvania one. I thought
Okay.
it was more middle of the state, but Michael would probably have a better idea.
Mm-hmm.
Youngling. So when I was in college, my sophomore year, I got signed a roommate who was a transfer student, um, who had come in. He had been a football player and just wasn't going to continue with that, so he transferred out of the school he was at to play football to a more academically inclined school, which is where I was at. But he was a beer drinker. He was a
Mm-hmm.
nice, super nice. We got along great as roommates, but we had very little in common. But he had another guy on the floor who was also a beer drinker, and they got to palling around. And on the weekends, they would go down to the local beer distribution site, Sam the Beer Man. They'd go down to Sam the Beer Man, and they would see what was on sale.
Mm-hmm.
What case of beer could they get for the least amount of money?
Mm-hmm.
And then they would buy a case of that and a 6-pack of something pretty good.
Yeah, I know exactly. I knew you were going to go there.
And on Friday night, they drink three of the good ones, and then half of the case. And Saturday night, they'd finish off both.
There
So
you go. Because after the first 3 or 4, you can't taste it anymore anyway. So it doesn't matter what you're drinking.
So they come back one week, and this is the regular thing. This is what goes on throughout the first semester. Somewhere towards the end of the first semester, they come in one time and say, "Oh, we got the best deal ever. We got a case of Gibbons beer for like $4, uh, which even then was super cheap. $4 for a case. So they'd bought like Heineken for their 6-packs. And we can afford to have really good beer. So they each had 3 Heinekens, and they cracked open a Gibbons, and they started drinking it, and they looked at each other and said, "This tastes like shit." This is well, okay, but at $4 for a case, we can drink a 6-pack of Heineken, and
Yes.
still this will be a cheap weekend. So they each finished off their 6-pack of Heineken and went back to the Gibbons and said, "I can't drink this swill."
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I had.
so when they went back, they'd broken one of the 6-packs in the case. So Sam the Beer Man would not take the case back. He would only
Mm-hmm.
take the individual 6-packs back, which were like 75 cents a piece because the case was only $4. And we had to keep the other 4 beers out of the original 6-pack. And
Mm-hmm.
so it became a challenge in our room if you could drink anyone who could drink a whole beer a whole can of Gibbons.
Gibbons.
My roommate was going to give him $20.
Yeah. I had acquaintances in college who had similar approaches. In La Crosse, where I went to school, there was this immediately off campus. You cross the street from the campus to off campus. There was this little mom and pop grocery store.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the name of it, but they obviously they catered a lot to the college campus, which is right across the street. And La Crosse has, over a town of 50,000 people, has 3 colleges in it.
That's a lot of colleges.
Yes. But yeah, the people who I knew in the dorms would do the same thing. They go to this store every weekend on a Friday night, and they'd see what was the cheapest. And at that time, it was usually it must have been like a 12-pack of bottles of Old Milwaukee.
Oh, Old Milwaukee.
Not a good beer.
Not even by Milwaukeean standards.
No, not a good beer. But yeah, so they would get that, and yeah, you'd have to, and they were generous with the beers they purchased. Here, hey, it's Friday night. Here, there's a football. There's a college football game on, or hey, we're going to watch a movie, or we're just going to sit around and blow off steam after the week of classes. Everybody who came in the room got got an Old Milwaukee, because it's like $4 for
Right.
And oh, hey, thanks. Oh man,
Ooh, boy,
this is going to be a chore. But anyway, Michael points out that Youngling is made in eastern Pennsylvania, somewhere rural Philly area. And also it says Old Milwaukee was good for beer pong. I suppose, yeah, the taste of the ping pong ball
is not going to throw off the beer.
Could only improve it. Yeah. One more thing before we actually try to wrench this back to a possibly related topic, thanks to a comment of Michael's that's farther upstream now. I just learned that at least these days, ping pong balls are made of nitrocellulose, which is a remarkably flammable material. It doesn't. They don't. I saw a little YouTube reel or something. They don't explode, but they burn quite quickly.
Yeah.
And to give you an idea of how quickly they just might burn, nitrocellulose was like an accidental discovery, and it was one of the substances that was used in early film stocks.
Right.
So if you know anything about film stocks, early film stock was incredibly flammable.
Yeah.
And if you've seen the film Inglourious Bastards, you get an example of that.
Right.
Well, nitrocellulose was one of the substances that was part of those early film stocks and responsible for a large portion of its potent flammability. So there's a little bit of random useless knowledge. Michael asked, who were some of our favorite D&D artists over the years? And being the non-artist there, I may have told this story before. I'm going to go first, Stan.
Go ahead.
When I first interviewed with Roger for the job at Dragon Magazine, I didn't get it that time. But I got it later. But I interviewed for my dream job and didn't get the job. But but it was still okay because I got to spend a big chunk of that interview inside the TSR building. And I got to meet a lot of people whose names I had been reading for years because I was always a credits reader, or who wrote this, who was the editor, who did the maps, who's the artist, And my favorite moment was when Roger took me around to the cover artists area. There was Clyde Caldwell and Jeff Easley. Larry Elmore wasn't there anymore. I'm not sure if Keith Parkinson was there anymore, but I just remember walking in that room and just kind of meekly looking over Clyde's shoulder and meekly looking over Jeff's shoulder,
Yeah.
and just seeing these iconic images, that I spent most of a decade marveling over, coming to life. And that that was the most amazing part of that day, was just seeing these artists creating these iconic images, out of their brains.
Yeah.
No artistic talent within me, and nothing visual. Nope, 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 nope. So it was the most astonishing thing that A, anybody can do it, and B, people can do it to that level of skill and ability and awesomeness.
And we can that they can too.
Mhm. And so, for me especially, growing up reading Dragon magazine, there were a lot of Clyde Caldwell covers, and of course Jeff Easley was the default cover artist there for a bunch of years for the AD&D products and stuff. So those two probably are the most D&D artists to me, to my brain, in at least from during my gamer days into my uh, professional career days, but also being lucky enough to do what I did for a living. I got to meet guys like Clyde and Jeff,
Mm.
and get and Todd Lockwood and Alan. Oh my gosh, his last name Alan Pollock, and Rob Rupel, and of course the guys who did the maps and stuff, who Dave Sutherland and Diesel
Right.
LaForce, and later on Rob Lazzaretti. And I got to know these people not just through their visual skills, which continued to amaze me, but it's like, hey, these people seem to like me for some reason.
They're nice people too.
Yeah, exactly. They're nice people. Yeah, Dave Sutherland. He was everybody's kindly uncle.
Yeah.
And he had all these stories because he had been around from largely day one. You know, and all these wonderful stories and stuff. So I really felt embraced by a lot of those guys, who came along later, maybe came into the building after I was. So I don't know, after I had been there. So I don't know if that played into it all. But these guys were artists and could do things I could never even pretend to do. And we'd interact, and I give them an art order for something that I was writing or editing, and this kind of vague sort of description of, okay, here's what I'm kind of thinking, a couple of paragraphs here, and maybe this guy, make this person look like that, and this monster from here, and they would just work their magic and make this art, and it was like, wow. And of course I had the same reaction, to comic book artists and stuff, because I was a comic book nerd long before, even before I was a game nerd. So later on, when I was fortunate enough to interact with some Marvel people later on through TSR and stuff, it was like, oh, I got to meet some of these Marvel artists. I think that there was still the bullpen was still a thing one day, one time when I think Stephen Shen and I were in New York for a convention, and the licensing person at Marvel, because of course TSR had the Marvel superheroes game, we got invited to get a tour of the Marvel offices, and yeah, there was a version of the bullpen still there. It wasn't like it was back in the 60s and 70s, I'm sure, but and it got to see a few people, see, wait, say, oh, look at that, that's that person
Yeah.
over there, they're working, you can't interrupt them, and stuff. And this was in January. It was right after the holidays, but Marvel, they had their holiday party in January after everybody was back to work, and Steve and I got invited to that party, And of course, we knew no one there.
Right.
And so we just kind of hung out together, and it was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, oh, this is really cool, and I wish now that we had been, either one of us, but especially me, because I'm not in charge of Stephen, had been a little bit more outgoing, would have gone up and introduced myself to some of these people and said, hey, I know you don't know me, blah, 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 and just, talk to some of these people for a few minutes. But it was still pretty darn cool to be at the Marvel Comics holiday
Yeah.
party.
I'll say that's awesome.
Yeah, Michael says that's a pretty great consolation prize. Yeah, that's pretty good. All right, Stan.
What?
Who were some of your favorite D&D artists over the
Oh,
years?
well, I, it's going to be a lot of the same ones you were naming, right?
Mm-hmm.
I never got. Larry was well and truly gone by the time I got there. But of the cover artists, Larry Elmore was the one whose work I always felt most drawn to. But it's not surprising. His has a very I don't know that cartoony is the word I want, but animated, and they
Mm-hmm.
feel like characters that could come from an animated uh, pieces. A lot of raw emotion in Larry's stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
I would agree with both of those statements. Yep.
I mean, I loved. Yeah, I could tell. I was listening to you say that, and my thought was, yeah, I'm hearing that. Every time I say one name, it means I'm not saying another, and it feels like I'm dissing the guy I really liked. But
Yeah,
uh,
when you know a lot of these people, you're terrified that you're not there's one person you're not going to mention, and they're
right,
going to find out.
yeah, and they're the one that happens to be listening.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
um, I didn't get to work with him really long. I really liked Rob Rupel, um,
Mm-hmm.
just because I mean they all had their very strong and beautiful styles, but Rob's was just so different than everyone else's. Um,
Yes, it was very. This. There's a couple of terms that popped to my head in there. I don't think they're even words, but I don't have the vocabulary. The visual vocabulary. They were Rob Rupel stuff was so like like a painting you'd see in a gallery.
yes, yeah, he was
It had
very
that
very
aesthetic,
fine art feel,
or what?
fine art.
Yes, fine art. Yes, thank you. Yeah, not commercial art, not pop art. Yeah, fine art. Yeah, his works very much had that aesthetic, and of course that was the perfect aesthetic for some of the things that the company was doing at the time, like Ravenloft.
Yeah,
Oh, his covers for Raven. Oh, perfect. Chef's kit. Oh, perfect matchup.
um,
Michael in chat talks about. Oh, you can go ahead, Stan, if you had more to say.
I was going to say that, and then get the people that I did get to work. I got to work with Jeff Easley a fair amount, but he, everyone I know who knows him well, makes me wish that I'd been able to get past his kind of very very dry, quiet wall.
Yeah, that facade that he had. Yes.
Uh, because I I took it as a he didn't really want to be bothered chatting, not be bothered, but I was bugging
Mhm.
him, right? And when
Right.
almost certainly everything I know now that I've learned and talked to him more since was never the case, but it was in my head. So
Yeah, mine too.
yeah, but I spent a lot of time with Todd Lockwood and
Hmm.
Randy Post, RK Post.
Right. Yes, Randy. Yeah. he and Alan were ones who would come in a little bit later. I think I don't remember.
Yeah.
It all blends together because anyone who I ever worked with at TSR, my brain just assumes they were there the whole time I was. Like hearing in some of the previous times you've allowed me to come here and share this platform with you. It's like, well, I started at TSR in whatever year it was you started. Was it 95 or something like
95.
that?
Yeah.
I started in the fall of '89, and it's like, really? Stan wasn't there in like 92, 93 even? Yeah, 'cause,
Well, I have a tendency to walk into a room and suddenly take up more space, and that's happened since. I mean, the first time I really noticed it was college, where I went away to college, and less than 2 weeks later, everyone thought I was a transfer junior, and
huh.
I wasn't trying to do any. It's just kind of my uh, self confidence, I guess, my and
Mhm.
my ability to suss things out. I was able to understand, give answers to complicated things about the campus and campus life because I'd read some of the paperwork that they gave us and listened carefully and made connections. And so everyone, including the some of the RAs, thought that I was a transfer junior, not an incoming freshman.
Well, Stan, you are also quite gregarious and very easy to like. And I'm sure that has an aspect of it too, because it's like, hey, this guy's smart, friendly, and outgoing and funny, and I want him to be my friend, so I'm going to be his friend.
I hope so.
Uh,
Um,
so you started in '95. I started in '89. Really, kind of at the beginning of what I imagined it was kind of the hiring wave that TSR went through in the very late '80s into the '90s, and kind of completing towards '95, '96, where I don't think we were hiring a lot of people, many people after you, because there were already some dire portents.
right. Yeah. No. After me, Bruce Cordell was the last. Uh, Jeff Quick got brought in, but um, that was in RPGA.
Yeah, and RPGA the magazines, they don't count. Come on.
Well, I mean, they didn't have the same hiring structure. Is all I'm really saying. But the core creative services, the last of that big hiring spurt was Bruce Cordell.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm just
I
teasing
know,
us
because that's
both.
where you came in, and I'm totally dissing you.
No, no, not at all, not at all. No, there was
Maybe a little.
maybe a little. Yeah, yeah. But there were. I'm not going to say there were cliques or anything, but the magazine people really didn't work with the games people, and the RPGA people didn't really work with the games people or the magazine people. We all had our own jobs to do,
Kind
and
of
we
like
would.
I was just saying with Jeff Easley. I think we put those on those are all internal walls. I mean, to an extent, a lot of us
Mhm.
for business purposes there wasn't a lot of interaction, and we turned that into a social wall that we thought had always been there and was intentional.
Yeah, and I agree with you, but I also am happy to observe that as we brought more and as the hiring went on and on, those walls started breaking down. Uh, as I came out of my shell a little bit more, and I was able to make some pretty close friends in the games department and in the book department and stuff. Like I said, I started in '89, September 18th, 1989.
Hmm.
So 2 weeks after I started, Timothy Brown and Bill Connors started in the games department, and for a while there, we were the three new kids. We were the three musketeers. So we kind of naturally gravitated toward each other and became quite good friends. And then there were other people. There was Blake Mobley, who only worked there for a couple of years, and Stephen Shen. And then we got into a lot of the uh, the Rob King and Dory people, and then we started snitching more people away from GDW. Bill Connors had been a freelancer for GDW, and Tim Brown had
Right.
worked for GDW, and we started stealing more people away from there, like Julia Martin and was Rob Lazzaretti a GDW person? Anyway,
Rob,
and
yeah,
then we,
yeah, Rob did come from GW. What do you
yeah,
see, Andrew? I'm
and
starting
Lester,
reading the Odyssey of Gilthanas for the first time. It says co-written by Stan. It is co-written by Stan.
woohoo!
It's
Which words did you write, Stan? Which words did you write?
every sixth. So
I did.
honestly, it's
I
the
did all. I did all the adverbs.
right. Odyssey of Gilthanas is an interesting product. Um, like so many things that happened with the Fifth Age, Dragonlance Fifth Age era, we were trying to solve problems that the company, it turns out, didn't really want us to solve. um, and we were trying to get Fifth Age. The whole thing for Fifth Age, which started before I got there, was that they wanted to create a game that the people who were Dragonlance book readers could play, and we could bring them into being gamers too. And that was um, why the products had the form they did, kind of like a book, in the shape of a hardcover book. Um,
Yeah, that
and
trade dress was
yeah,
very particular. Yes.
right. But we kept failing. The products kept getting shelved with the games. We wanted them shelved with the books, so that people who were going to that section of then in the bookstore, if you went to the horror and sci-fi section, because there was no fantasy section. At the
Right.
tail of that was where the Star Trek books were, and there were only a couple of licensed uh, uh, property, licensed carryover books, and all of the D&D books, just all the FR books together, all the Dragonlance books together, and so we wanted, or they wanted, to be able to put game product in that area so they could see it and know that it's for them. Um, and that didn't work out. In fact, the sales department never ever told us that was impossible and would never happen. We could not achieve that
Mm-hmm.
because of how things are shelved in the bookstore. Because it's sold as a game, it's got a code. The shelving code says games, and so it goes with games. And so Odyssey of Gilthanas was an idea we came up with of doing uh, doing a book that filled in a section of the Fifth Age storyline that had just been glossed over. That jumped 30 years, and the characters had been at one place, and they show up at another place and hint at having a backstory. And the book department had no interest in doing that book. We asked them about it, so they had no interest in doing that book. And so we determined that we could do a book that had a book form, and the book department, it could be sold as a book, which the book department didn't like. And so the whole thing was really a big struggle. And in the end, we had to we were happy. We were happy to work with them, and we wanted their input. They just wanted us to stop it. Um, but uh, so Steve Miller and
Well,
I,
just
we were. The idea was to write this book of the based on the idea of the Odyssey. The story had been that Gilthanas, the main character, we knew where he started. We knew he winds up as a prisoner when he's discovered in a later Fifth Age storyline, and says that he has been on this quest and got trapped in this prison. But how he got from here to there, no one knows. So I don't remember whether Steve Miller or I, or came up with this idea individually, or we did it in a brainstorming session with Sue and the rest of the team. But the idea of literally making it like the Odyssey, making it his Odyssey, where he goes and he does this. He goes to the island of the Sirens and then he escapes, and then he goes and he does another thing, and he pops along, and we know that in the end he's going to wind up in this prison. And since each of those stories could be self-contained, we could write them as short stories rather than a novel. This would be a very tightly unified anthology.
Mm-hmm.
But the book department was also they if we were just going to write it, they said no, we absolutely will not do that. And we said, well, what if we got an author to a Dragonlance author? And they said, well, our authors are all busy. So, well, we just talked to Doug Niles, and he said he might be interested in doing that. And the book department kind of had to acquiesce, but they were not cooperative. They didn't block us, but they didn't help us. And so about half the book, I don't think I did a full third of the book. No, I did, because at the back there's some game material, and I did the game material, and together with Ed Stark, some of it. But so we split the fiction parts up. I did about 20%, and Steve and Doug took the others, and we broke it up into these sections. We outlined it and got Doug in to help with the brainstorming, so we could say, here's what happens, and here's the important thing that he has to get out of it, and this is where you need to leave him so the other guy can pick him up. And then we could each write our stories the way we wanted to.
It sounds like the way the Destroyer novels were written, the way Bill Holmes novels, we talked about those. And there was back in the pulp days, there was I don't know which magazine it was. May have been Weird Tales, but I can't say that with any certainty. The editor of the magazine came up with an idea very much like an episodic sort of longer tale written by different authors with very different styles. And a couple of the authors were, of course, at this time, Robert E. Howard and H.P. Lovecraft, along with a couple of others. And as I recall, H.P. Lovecraft's section came right before Robert Howard's. And of course, in the finale of the Lovecraft section of the story, his protagonist is confronted with some horrible cosmic abomination, and the protagonist promptly faints or something, and wakes up, tied to a sacrificial altar. Boom. End of Lovecraft section. Boom. Start Robert E. Howard section, where this just recently recovered protagonist who had fainted at the sight of the monster now busts himself out of the ropes or the chains or whatever it is, binding him to this altar, and just cleans the clocks of all the cultists in that room with the chains that had bound him,
Right? Yeah.
And then the story continues in a very Robert E. Howard fashion. It's just like, oh, this is great. As you were telling your story about Gil Thanos' Odyssey, that popped into my mind.
There's a term for that. There's a term for that kind of writing where you hand off between authors, and there have been some very famous books that have been written like, oh, what the heck is the name of that?
Excuse me, I apologize for all these untoward noises. Allergies is kicking in or something.
Chris says
Michael,
Gilthanas'
a
fable.
lot of
Yeah,
the wild cards novels were written that way too.
yeah.
And there's a lot of time in a lot of serial fiction, IP based fiction. It's like we don't care what you do in the middle, but he's got to start here, he's got to end here.
But there are a couple.
Are you still there, Stan, or are you
yeah,
thinking about something?
Can you hear me?
I think someone's frozen. I don't know.
God, am I back? Can you hear me now? What happened? Ugh. Hopefully. Right now, if you can hear me in chat, type something. Because it looks like I'm okay. But Dale is not here anymore. I never left. Okay, good. Stan is fine. Aw, thank you kindly. Dale, if you can hear us, we can no longer hear you. It looks like you're connected. I'm going to disconnect you. Call back in. There we go. All right. I was trying to look up what this kind of there's a term for this kind of project that where writers hand off the serialized storytelling. They write up to a point, so often write up to a word count, and then hand it off to the next author, who just has to pick it up from there. Handing from one author to the next. Let's see if AI can figure this out. And if it can't, then I'll just go forward from there. Come on. Exquisite corpse is a term I've been thinking of. Exquisite corpse. Hello, Lester. Boy, Dale was here and he popped out. I hope it's not because they had bad weather, and I hope it's not anything I did. But hopefully he'll be back. Oh, Dale says he's trying to get back in. Okay, well, we're open for you, Dale. The door is open. I don't know what happened. If I close that and open it again, maybe that'll change it. I don't know what happened. Anyway, exquisite corpse is a term I was trying to come up with. Not that it really helps anything. It doesn't further it. It was just the word was stuck in my head and it wouldn't come along. So exquisite corpse style, we would pass the narrative around. Although we had an outline, we knew it had to get from here to there, but each of us could tell our individual chapters as we wanted. And Doug, as I recall, had the biggest. He had a big chunk of the main storyline of what happened, and the way you can tell the difference is that in the chapters, when you're reading those chapters, in the chapters that Steve and I wrote, they're told from a first-person perspective of a person who is not Gilthanas. It's someone who sees Gilthanas and tells the story of what happens to him when from their perspective, and how something will happen and then he'll wander off. And the chapters that are written in the third person, like you would normally get, most novels are written in. Those are the chapters that Doug wrote. So, who was it that said they were Chris Andrew? Chris Andrew, while you're reading that, that's how you'll be able to tell which chapters are mine and Steve's. You'll, I guess, just have to guess which ones are Steve's and which ones are mine. Waiting for host. Oh, I'm offline. It says I'm offline. How can I be talking to people if I'm offline? All right. Uh, Again, just for confirmation, if you can still hear me, post something in the comments because my computer said, "Oh, there we go. Dale's back. I must be back online." Hello, Dale.
Am I back? Hello, hello.
You're back. Hello, hello. Again.
All right, I'll turn down the volume on my phone. So,
I was like, wait, what am I doing over there?
yeah, I don't know. Everything here just froze, and I tried to get back in a couple of times. I had to shut down my browser and then reopen it, and that seemed to do the
All
trick.
right. Well, it's always good to have a little technical panic in the middle of a show. That keeps everyone interested. Hello, Cindy.
Absolutely.
All right, so folks,
Thanks, Chris.
Lester says exquisite corpse is a new term for you. Oh, look it up, Lester. It's been I don't remember how far back. It certainly goes back into the 70s or 60s, but I think it's even earlier than that. But yes, I think I finished what I was saying. Yeah, Doug's in the exquisite corpse style. We handed it off from one to another, and Steve's chapters and my chapters are written in the first person from someone who is looking at Gilthanas, and the Doug's chapters are written in the third person semi-omniscient with Gilthanas as the in character.
Exquisite Corpse was also the title of a Poppy Z. Bright novel that in the early 90s, a horror novel, early 90s during the whole, it was it happened a lot at the same time where there was a lot of the goth renaissance in the early 90s with Vampire the Masquerade.
Right.
And
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the term used for a lot of things. Also, there's a graphic novel by a French cartoonist, but it played with that because it was also the story was an exquisite corpse story, the story of a ghostwriter.
Got it. Okay.
Um, the first time I heard about it was there was a book that a very popular like quick summer read, very popular semi romantic a romance book uh, in the early '80s, which turns out was written by about 8 or 10 different authors who just passed the book along
Mm-hmm.
from like one would write a chapter and pass it to the next one. All right, I see that now. I see that my visual has frozen up.
Yep. Looks like I was just about to say something. You're still animated, but the art's not moving.
All right, so what if I do this? And I come over here, so it's just you and me. I know we can't see you, but now I can. I'm going to disconnect the um, thing, let it sit for a second, see if we get a little
A
memory
little
back.
synchronization happens. Yeah. Michael in the chat's bringing the knowledge. He says there's also a technique of drawing with folded paper from top to bottom. In 1932, artists Frida Kahlo and Lucien Bloch created two. Geez, why can't I read? Two near nude exquisite corpses.
All right, good for them. All right, let's see what happens now. Come back here. Ah, we're moving again.
There, things are moving.
All right.
All this seemed to start when Lester showed up.
It's it seemed it all
And for
this
those
seemed to
who don't
start
know,
when I decided to go off and try and look something up online instead of letting myself
oh, okay.
sound like an idiot.
Okay. Well, for those of you who don't know, in the Facebook chat, Lester Smith has joined us, former TSR game designer, editor, raconteur,
Mm.
and good friend to Man and Beast. And I'm lucky enough to call him a good friend. And I believe Stan is similarly lucky.
I like to think so. So it's up
Up
to
to
whether or
up
not.
to Les to let us know.
Yeah.
He might just be too nice to come out and say he's been enduring us for the last 30 years.
Well, at the very least, he's wasting his time here tonight, so that's a good sign. Oh man.
Yeah, I'm always trying to ditch you, Lester. That's why you and I text so much and spend so much time talking, either like this or during a virtual gaming night or just confabbing from our distant physical locations. But hey, Lester, you left TSR and then you left Wisconsin. I know I went to Seattle, but I came back. Damn it!
All right. So I don't know, for those that are watching, I was finding that, let me just see what percentages I've got so I can repeat this. It's 71% there and 83% there. So when I just finished to a point and everything looked like this. And one of the things about doing these faded backgrounds is you've got to find the right, like, it seemed great, but now that I've got them floating over each other, the background is still too strong. It's competing too much for main attention. So what I do is go back and drop the opacity, because we've got a white background. It's the same thing as just making them a little weaker version of their colors. So go here down to the 83%. Maybe I did that too fast. I don't know if you can see that. Oh, they're clearly, the colors just kind of get to be lighter versions of themselves. Get to 83 there, and on that, the lines for the background piece, I'm going to drop that to about 73%. Stop at 75. And now they're still there, but the front pops a little more. But because they're now semi semi-transparent, that's not so good. But the way I fix that is this: I'm gonna duplicate each layer. I'm gonna duplicate this layer. So now I've got two of lines. See how they kind of add up a little to make one makes the other stronger. And the one below it, I'm going to auto lock. Auto lock means that I now can only fill areas that are already filled with something, with drawing. And I'm going to fill that with white, a white version of the same line. And how can I show you this so you can see it? So I'll turn off the background and that, and we can see that we've got the purple layer, but there's also a white layer beneath it. So now that gives it a solid underneath. And if I merge those into one, it's now solid again. And
Michael had asked the question, oh, it's opacity. Oh, I'm sorry, opacity, not saturation, and follows it up with, oh, I have to show my other Procreate artist friend how to watch this segment to see how you do that.
All right, so there again, I'm going to double that up and fill one with the bottom one. I'm going to alpha lock it and fill it with white. so that we have a color version and a white version. And now it's opaque down to, so if I draw something behind it, we won't see it. And I merge them together, and now I've got an opaque version at the intensity that I want it to be. And now the whole thing is just looking a little more like I wanted.
Thank you for that, Stan. That was very instructive, not just to the Procreate people, but just that bit of visual knowledge there. Because, like I said, I'm fascinated by this entire aspect of creativity, and seeing how these things are assembled continues to astound me. Now, here's a question: how might you have achieved the same effect in an analog environment?
Well, in an analog environment, you just have to pick the right colors. The beauty of the digital one is I picked the colors that were the right, but I picked them too strong. Like, and in an analog environment, you just got to get it right the first time,
Okay.
which is why it's harder. Which is why I still am in awe of the painters of Tyler Jacobson, who did this in. He might have done it. He probably did it digitally too, but certainly watching Todd Lockwood and the Elmore and Larry Elmore and Jeff Easley and all the people who do it in traditional media. Yeah, I can't get it right the first time.
Yeah, and we've talked about some of that stuff in the past too. I know with when you had talked about Hirschfeld's cartooning, he just
Yeah,
gets just that the perfect line every time, and and he did all that, with pen and ink
but so I don't
on a.
think I were you here when I was talking about that last. You don't know.
I may not have been on, but I remember hearing you talk about it, so I may have been in the audience if I wasn't
Yeah,
co-hosting that one.
I always thought he did that with getting just the one perfect line, but he doesn't. He does it if you ever watch him draw, and if you ever can see one of his originals and look up close, it's a bunch of little scritchy lines until he builds up the curve he wants it to be. And
Okay.
sometimes he has to paint over it with white and do it again. Whereas I swoop and digitally erase and swoop and digitally erase, and I'm so lucky.
I remember my time with Dragon when our art director for the vast majority of my time there, Larry Smith, who came from the New York advertising scene, uh, a very talented man of his own, would come in and would be working on some art for some aspect of either Dragon or Dungeon magazine. And of course, this was all light table and waxers and X-Acto
Right?
knives and stuff. And there was one time I came in and he was hunched over the light table, and he was, so I tried not to interrupt him. I just, tried to let him know I was there. And eventually, I looked up and I asked him whatever I had to ask him or got whatever I needed from him. And then as being an artist, I stepped forward and I was like, "What are you doing?" And he was stippling, which I didn't know at the time,
Right.
but making a very, very large number of very, very small dots, to give shade and texture to this particular illustration that he was working on. And I was like, you made all those dots yourself,
Yeah.
and it was just, and it was like, and they were beautiful. They were perfect. And I was just like, that is so far beyond anything I can even conceive of doing, But it was just, even just a few years later, still working on a magazine, still working with Larry. I walk in and he was cutting. He was cutting something with an X-Acto knife to put onto an illustration, and it was a piece of pre-stippled paper. He bought stippled paper. I get it, so you could cut it out and add it to illustrations and so forth. And it was like, oh, that looks like that's much easier
Yeah.
than doing that all by hand.
Yeah. I remember the first time that's broadly referred to as Zipatone.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the first time that I was able to, because I understood that that's what it was, but I didn't have access to any. And
Mm-hmm.
the first time I was able to get some in Japan, you could buy it all. Like they had these little in the States. I'd managed to buy one or two sheets, and they were large sheets that cost a significant amount of money. So you really only bought the ones you needed and used them sparingly. In Japan,
Mm-hmm.
they were just you could go into just about any stationery store and buy ones which were size of printer paper of hundreds of different patterns, and so you
Mm-hmm.
could get, and they were cheap, and so I bought a bunch of them, and I started using them on some of the pieces I was working on there, and it was great.
Before you take your attention all the way back to the art, Stan, I would ask you to look in the chat and pronounce that P word, Michael, in chat. I don't know how to say that word. Something is amazing. Do you have a
It's pointillism.
pointillism? Okay.
Um, yeah. So after a while, though, even that it became such you have to work so exactingly with Zipatone, cutting it out to the right shape and burnishing it down, and uh, I
Mm-hmm.
got to the point where it was like I just wanted to put the dots down again. I couldn't be bothered, and I started saving it for. There were some. It's very good for getting effects that might take hours to do like that. I still
Mm-hmm.
used it like that. But nowadays, you just get brushes, digital brushes that'll lay down stippling like that, lay down Zipatone patterns, and so you see that in
Fascinating.
it remains very popular in the production in manga. You've always seen a lot of it in manga, but
Sure.
now anyone that's influenced by manga can just buy some brushes and start putting some mechanical tones, some the equivalent of Zipatone.
We have a person who just joined or just commented for the first time in the chat. I'm not going to say his name because I would butcher it, and I don't want to butcher your name, sir. But he has a question about that technique for Stan. Have you ever used, quote, unishade, unquote?
If I ever used you, not by that name, so I'm not sure what your. It sounds like it's another version of the same stuff. So I have. So also besides the, I'm guessing this is what he's talking about. Besides the Zipatone uh, uh, sheets that you could lay on, they started producing um, drawing board that was had those tones embedded in it, but you needed to treat it with a chemical to release it. And if you look at the early Mutant Ninja Turtles and the stuff like that, where it looks like there are two kinds of shading, two kinds of Zipatone. What that's done is on a board that uses that kind of thing, and you use one chemical to release one of the shadings and another chemical to release the other shading. And so you can, by applying it with a brush, you can have very fine control of where each of them comes up. Um, yes, so apparently, yes, uh, Eustaquio. I'm going to say Eustaquio. Eustaquio. That yes, I have not ever used that. Although I've seen it. I've gotten to play with it in a friend's studio, but I've never had any that I've used for my drawings. It always looked like fun. Um, and I can't remember. Maybe that was a term for the Unishade. I can't remember what I had called it in that era. It was whatever the brand was, so it probably was Unishade. Um, so yes, I know what you're talking about, and no, I never did that.
Yeah, he also says it might have been called Duo Shade.
Duo Shade, yeah, Duo Shade is the brand that I was aware of.
Okay, there we go. Mystery solved.
I love it when we solve a mystery.
All right, here's a question for you, Stan. Where do you, since you're working on a beholder, where do you fall on the whole arts, the visual evolution of the beholder? You know, from the beach ball with one eye, with one big central eye,
Hmm.
and a few little sticks. I like the original OD&D, little white books kind of thing, through the secondary eyes are on fingers,
Yeah.
essentially kind of depiction, to the one that's been in the game for a few editions now. The secondary eyes are on, sinuous tentacles or something like that. Do you have a preference?
Um, I find it for when I draw it, I have a style that I usually go to, and I'll show you that in a second. But I'll finish answering the question before I do. Um, I've always found it actually amusing, particularly for the Xanathar, who this, according to the books, according to the notes in on the inside cover, this is the Xanathar, who has been on 3 other covers I've drawn, and each artist draws a little differently. um,
Yeah,
I've
this
always
is.
there's
Go
some
ahead.
versions that uh, I think I think there's something to recommend most of them. Though the original Beast Ball is kind of goofy looking. Uh, but who am I to knock something for being goofy looking? Uh, but there's a version that comes a lot of artists seem to like, which are they're not, instead of tentacles, the eye stalks seem to be jointed. They've got these little nubby elbow joints and bend in 3 or 4 different places. Um,
Mhm.
and
Yeah, I think I described those as kind of like, eye stalks were kind of like fingers,
fingery,
with
yeah, that's a very good
with,
description.
with visible joints in them. Yes.
So that's not the kind I see when I think about a beholder, but it's been fun trying to draw that a couple of times. Um, these the other things is, even with the tentacles, there are some that look very phallic, and some that look more octopoidal.
Yes. Yes.
There,
When I was composing that question in my head, I was trying to determine whether or not to mention the sometimes phallic qualities of the eye stalks.
yeah, I mean that often or generally falls into how you treat the eyes at the end of the eye stalks, because there are some where, I mean, come on, they are little penises with retinas in their tips. It,
Yeah, the eye stalks are very veiny, and
yeah,
the eye at the end is very reminiscent of, yes,
very very foreskin like.
yes, exactly.
Um, Trying to be accurate without being too
Too anatomical about it.
yeah. And I don't prefer that either.
Hmm.
So, I guess having said that, let me stop this for a second and come out into my gallery and go on to the uh, no, this one, the one from my Thursday night thing. So here's an example of my
Okay.
Right?
And of
So
course, your Thursday night thing is random encounters, where every Thursday night you get online and do some improv cartooning, very
yeah,
often based on a couple of random encounter tables, just like in D&D, with dice results that you have a dice roller, you get the results of a D&D esque creature and some sort of activity, and you improv them into a cartoon live in front of an audience. And here's an example of that. This was uh, Beholder sports fan or
I think
something, I guess.
Beholder football fan or Beholder.
Okay.
Uh,
Oh yes, okay. I can see the three dots that would represent the Steelers logo and the Vikings head, and of course the cheese head,
yeah,
and the kind of wings on the green hat. So that's probably the Eagles, and of course
yep,
KC being KC.
yep. So do you
Oh,
get? How about the last one on the far right?
it's purple. It must be the Ravens.
Yep. So I'm going to pat myself on the back for good job there. Oh, and here's the.
That's the only other purple team in the league. So.
So here's another one from there. So that is my style of beholder.
Okay.
Um, for what I. However, like I said, I know that there are so many ways of doing a beholder right. None of them are
Mm-hmm.
wrong. This is my style.
Right. And yeah, the other aspect that seems to have evolved over time is um, the relative area the central eye takes
Yeah, that varies a lot.
on this on this spherical body, and the to use the phrase that I know would make people and TSR cringe after a while, the gaping maw
Yeah.
of a beholder's mouth. It's like, okay, maybe they don't have any bones at all, but that mouth seems way too big.
Right. Right. I mean, like I draw it with just a huge mouth.
Yeah,
So here we
exactly.
go. In this series, we had 2017. We had the Xanathar's Guide to Everything, where he had the finger type. They don't show in my version of it, and they not even sure how well they show in the cover itself. But it's definitely angular, jointed, and
Yes, I
that
recall
weird
that.
mouth. There's like a clown mouth around.
Hmm. I
Um,
think that was originally, wasn't that a Keith Parkinson piece of art? I
This
believe.
one, no. This is much. Sadly, much after Keith passed away. Though I do
Okay, I
have
must
a
be thinking
one
of the
that's
old.
this one 2014, the old
Oh, right.
monster. Is this a DMG or the Monster Manual? I don't remember. I think it's the Monster Manual. But
I
this is
believe
also
that.
supposed to be the Xanathar.
Mhm. I'm probably thinking of the. It was a piece of Parkinson art, and I think it was on one of the. It was on one of the original FR expansions. May have been like the
Here we go.
water deep,
Water Deep in the
the
North.
original water deep in the North book.
That one.
It had a yes, yes,
Yeah.
very fingery
Yeah.
eye stalks.
And
That's the one
it's
I'm.
got that mouth thing, but he's also
Mhm.
got those weird like breather uh, eyes next to his main eye.
Yeah, is the yeah those weird cheek things, whatever they
Little
are. Yeah.
little. I had trouble getting the in Keith's original one. They really feel like a soft, like mushy membrane as opposed to
Mhm.
um, the harder carapace on the outside.
Maybe they were supposed to represent gills or
Yeah,
ears
who
or
knows? Who knows? So yes, those are all Xanathar, and so is this.
hmm and see that boy's got a big maw there. He's
It's got
gonna he could
big
take a big bite out of something, but I don't know where he's gonna put it. You know, because it looks like most of that body, and this is no reflection on your art or the
Right.
original art. It's just, if you're looking at this as a, quote unquote real creature with, with organs and so
Yeah.
forth, it's going to be,
No,
if
anatomically, it
he
doesn't
takes
make
up,
a
if he
lick of
takes up the
sense.
biggest bite he possibly can, where is it going to go when he closes his mouth?
Yeah. It
And of
makes
course, it's a fictional creature. It's magic. Who cares? But
it makes
these are
zero
the things.
anatomical sense, but as you say,
Yes.
it's a magical creature. It doesn't need to. It's an aberration. It's aberrant.
Yes, Michael in chat says, since they're aberrations, all depictions are canon.
Yeah.
And Chris Andrew asks, did you hear about the beholder that worked as a paparazzi? He spent all of his time stalking American idols.
Oh, Chris Andrew. Hey, the one thing, though, you did a great job of describing the Random Encounter show. The one thing that I will add to what you said is that the audience, on top of the what we get in rolling the dice and the Random Encounter tables, audience input very often brings it to places I never would have gotten to, and increases the randomness of these encounters. And Chris Andrew is well known on Thursday nights for coming up with some really, really wonderfully awful puns.
Yeah. And responding to Michael in chat, no, I didn't miss the first one, Michael. I chose to ignore it. But Chris hits us with another one. What's a beholder's best D&D skill? Insight.
Oh dear. Oh, it's been too long a week already for me for that to work for me.
Well, you're hot and you're uncomfortable.
Yeah, I'm hot and I'm sad. I just can't. I just can't.
Okay. I don't know if Chris is going to take your appeal to heart or not, but Surreptitious says he believes their food ends up in the far realm, or the cookie monster, one of those two.
Yeah, it's a dimensional portal.
Yep, that works for me.
Why not? So Dale, I was talking earlier about the fact that we had Sean's wedding this weekend. There were a bunch of people in town. It's a real shame that more people couldn't make it. We had basically impromptu, or it wasn't meant to be a TSR reunion, but we invited some of the people who had been at the wedding and some others who live around here who don't often come out. Jeff and Kate Grubb uh, very kindly opened their backyard for us to have a gathering on Sunday afternoon, and we had Seb Cook was there, and um, Don Murin was there, and of course, I mean, Sean couldn't make it. It was his wedding the day before. He had other things to do, but other folks, Ray Valise and Ed Stark and Cindy Rice and Colin McComb. We had a great time, and I wish you could have been there with us. That would have been even better.
Well, that would have been wonderful. But
And Lester
I do
too. Oh,
know.
Lester's still hanging around. Okay, no, he's got to run. So bye, Lester.
Yeah,
Sorry you weren't here Sunday either.
yeah. As you mentioned, Jeff and Kate have always been very generous in opening their homes to friends new and old. They were very welcoming to all the new people that were coming into TSR, in the era, in our era. Stan,
Yeah.
over those years, there was always an invitation to Jeff and Kate's house. uh, Zeb and Helen Cook, did yeoman duty hosting bad movie nights, which may have been before your time, but it at least started before your era. But we watched many a strange movie in Zeb and Helen's living room in their house in Lake Geneva. Played many a game around their dinner table. Had a lot of meals there, and yeah, the people who were established at TSR and later at Wizards, but I think especially at TSR because we were this little island of people in the middle of rural Wisconsin who, if we went outside that little circle, weren't necessarily going to have a lot in common with a lot of the residents of that immediate area. We became, we were a social, we're more than just coworkers. We were very much, our own social circles.
Yeah.
And the people who had been there a long time were to an individual very open and generous with their time and saying, hey, come and have dinner, so on and so forth. And I remember I underestimated their this group's openness very early in my time there at TSR. I must have been there just over a year because, as I mentioned earlier, I started in September, and it was the next. So it wouldn't have been that year's Halloween. It must have been the following year's Halloween. I'd been there just over a year. I was still relatively new, and perhaps contrary to the image that I've blasted out the last few times you've allowed me to come here and talk with you. And there was a time when I was shy and kind of introverted, especially around, well, as I mentioned earlier, people whose names I had been reading in the credits for years. Oh my gosh, this is Jeff Grubb. Jeff Grubb is sitting at the same lunch table I am. Zeb Cook is right over there. John Pickens, Steve Winter, Bruce Hurd, all these names that I had seen for so long. And again, as you mentioned, with some of the people, you erected walls. I had walls that I erected between me and a lot of these people because I was shy
Right.
and frankly intimidated by a lot of these people through no action or word of their own. I was just, oh my gosh, I had the little, they were more than just coworkers. These were people that I had looked up to. These were idols, in a lot of ways. Now I was working with them, and I was just intimidated. But no, come on, hey, it's fine, and they all came around, and eventually I got it through my thick head that no, these people aren't stuck up or standoffish or anything like that. No, by and large, we're all to one degree or another flaming extroverts, and we just have to get used to being comfortable being that around these other people. Because that's after I had been at TSR a couple of years, and I felt comfortable there with Roger and Barbara, and later on Wolf and Larry, and the friends I had made in the games department that I already mentioned, and becoming good friends with Jim Lauder over in the book department. I was able to really come out of my shell and be the flaming extrovert that Roger once described me as. And back to the story. I thought, well, I'm in my flaming extrovert mode. My wife and I, we rent the second floor of a 3-story house in Williams Bay, and we're gonna have I guess it wasn't a Halloween party, but it was like it was a summer party thing. It was because I was grilling food, and we had rented some movies and stuff, and I figured, well, okay, it's a typical party in the normal world. About half the people you invite are going to show up, right?
Right.
So I made it a point to invite every single person I could from the building of TSR. In the people I knew, the departments I was familiar with, I invited them all, knowing only half of them are going to show up, and that'll be just about right. Every single person we invited showed up.
Well, that's the problem with throwing good parties.
Yes, and there were way too many people that I, especially my wife at the time, were prepared for. She was not a happy camper because I had sicked all these people on her. She knew a handful of them, because we had a gaming group with me, my wife at the time, Tim Brown, and his wife Bonnie, and Blake Mobley, who I mentioned earlier worked at TSR for about 2 years, and his wife Renee. All the girls had never really gamed before, and we were all roughly the same age. Again, we all had a lot in common. Obviously the guys all worked together, and so we had dinner together one night, the three couples, and we did it a couple of times, and it seemed everybody getting along pretty well, so that's good. So we ran a campaign. I think it was Tim who ran it, although Blake may have run it at times too, different, and one of them was running an adventure or something, and we played an AD&D campaign with the three of us guys who worked there and our three wives who had never gamed before anyway, in any way, shape, or form. And that was one of the best campaigns that I was ever a part of, because I was playing with my coworkers, and we were working on stuff, and all the women were in the same boat. They hadn't gamed before. They were all married to these weird nerds, but none of them had to be the only one at the table who didn't know what was going on.
That's an amazing equalizer.
Yes. And they discovered, they had other things in common, and for the period of time that Blake stayed with TSI, which again was, I want to say, a little bit less than 2 years. The six of us were like, it was every Thursday night, if I recall correctly, and we'd very often play at Tim and Bonnie's place because they were in Lake Geneva, and they had more room than my wife and I did. And Blake and Renee, if I remember, lived in Burlington, so that wasn't feasible. And so we get dinner, either purchase dinner, pizzas, or somebody would make dinner and bring dinner, and hang around, chat, unwind from the day, have a good meal, and then roll some dice and kill some monsters for a few hours.
Heaven.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I didn't know how good we had it, and as I was saying earlier about my evolution from being relatively reserved, at least at the beginning at TSI, to being who I am now. When my time in the industry ended, I did full time there, TSR Wizards Hasbro for like 12 and a half years. Then I did freelance for several years, probably too long. But eventually I got a full-time job back in the real world. And that was that Kohl's corporate job that I mentioned after we came back here to the Midwest. And I was like, okay, I had been at TSR and Wizards for 12 years, and I had freelanced for 4. Now I was going to be in a quote-unquote straight corporate situation.
Stupid real world.
And so I very consciously, had to take these personality levels, like on an equalizer board, and just bring them way down. Because I don't know these people. We don't necessarily have a lot in. We're not necessarily going to have a lot in common. A lot of them actually were younger than I was at that time, and So I was like, okay, I got to, and I think I did that successfully. I did make a couple of good friends. One of my coworkers had come from a publishing background and with an editing background like I did, so she and I became good friends during our time there at the company, and in the companies I've worked for since. It's also been okay. You got to try to be normal. You know, don't be too loud. Don't laugh too loud. Don't just try not to be weird. And when I was working at the first pharma company I worked for, I was like, okay, I'm going to get labeled as something. I'm going to become the blank guy. Because that's just you people. I was new, coming to a situation where a lot of people had known each other for a long time, and it was like
Right.
8 or 10 or 12 people in the same room, a room that was much too small, with cubicle subdividers, literally a storage room. Uh, and so it's like, okay, I'm gonna get labeled as Dale the something guy, and I consciously chose movies. It was like,
Moody
okay, everybody movies.
movie. Okay, good. That's better.
Everybody likes movies. Everybody goes to the movies once in a while. Everybody knows what movies are. You know, so if I feel, if I'm going to get involved in a conversation or something, I can talk about movies. It's not work related. Something. Oh, you're sitting in 10 minutes before the meeting starts. Everybody's filing into the room. Oh, have you seen this new movie? Blankety blank. I can talk about that stuff, and it worked. I became the movie guy, which was like, okay, that's the least weird thing. That's the least weird label that I could have gotten stuck with. So I felt good about that. And of course, now since the pandemic, I've been working from home, so I can be as weird as I want to be because the only person who has to put up with it is Cindy. So
Yeah, she has to. She took a vow.
yeah, she did. Yeah, she signed a piece of paper and everything. Yeah.
Hey, speaking of things that you could have been, we talked last time you were on. We wound up talking for a fair bit about baseball. I'm also looking up and seeing we've already hit 2.5 hours, and I want to not eat. You probably have to go to bed soon. Um, but did you uh, catch any of the All Star game
I did not
at all?
watch any of the stuff. I caught the news later. You know, um, Cal Raleigh, the Seattle catcher with the best and or worst nickname in all the major league sports, won the home run derby.
Yeah,
The game itself went to basically
a
a
mini home
shootout.
run derby. All right,
Yeah, a
so
home
that's
run
but so
derby.
that's what I want to talk about because I didn't
Okay.
watch the game either. I I have some stupidly strong feelings about the All Star game, um, but uh, the fact that well, I guess it plays into this. They have in the last 15 years or so, the All Star game used to mean nothing because it was just an exhibition game, and so people
Hmm.
would stop tuning in. So they decided to make it mean something,
Right.
right? So now the winner of the All Star game, whichever league wins the All Star game, gets home field advantage in the World Series.
Right.
And I hate that. I hate that so much. Um,
Me too.
Now, given that, I hate this. So for those who don't watch or don't know what we're talking about, usually in baseball, if a game is tied, you play extra innings until one team winds up ahead, and it theoretically can go on forever. And you've occasionally had some All Star games that did, and the teams hate that because it's an exhibition game. That you're anytime someone has to put out too much effort, or worse, somehow manages to actually injure themselves in an All Star game, the team they're from is just lost a very real tool, a part of their team for a game that means next to nothing. Nothing. It possibly used to be nothing at all. Now next to nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but now the game has meaning, right? And so getting rid of extra innings for this home run derby style, well, whoever hits the most home runs wins the game. For an exhibition, I think that's awesome. For a game that you're going to have home field advantage for the World Series, it's terrible. That's not
Yeah.
baseball. That's show off carnival stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like I have anything. It's the mixing of the two that gets to me.
Yes. It's the dichotomy that's involved. Either it's an exhibition or it means something. Just
Yeah,
decide this. Go back to where it didn't mean anything, or make it really mean something. But again, then you risk the injuries
yeah,
and so forth. So yeah, they're trying to to have one foot in both worlds,
yeah.
and no, I totally agree with you. It's not working, and yeah, we're not. I don't want to go off on another big baseball tangent, but yeah, there's a lot of changes that baseball has made in the regular season in the last 5 to 10 years that I vehemently disagree with. But that's not necessarily this here.
Yeah. All right. No, but that was the main thing I was wondered what you thought about that bat off or whatever they called it.
Yeah,
Bah,
whatever it was.
bah. Old man yells at clouds. Old man yells at clouds that look like
Yeah.
baseballs.
Chris Andrews says they changed that rule in 2017. The winner of the All-Star game no longer decides home field advantage. It's decided by best record now as of 2017. Prior to that, it did decide it. So I
Well,
was unaware of it.
I was I've been had my nose in the air so high I didn't see that change.
Me neither. That shows you how little attention I pay to the All-Star
All right.
game.
Well, thank you for that piece of information. I'll now change my snootiness so it is also technically correct.
There you go. Yes. Yeah, it's great to see the talented players celebrated, and of course there's never enough spots for everybody who deserves to be there. And yeah, there are probably a few guys who don't deserve to be there based on their particular numbers this season. But yeah, I was very happy to see the rookie Brewers pitcher, whose name I can't remember, and I don't want to pronounce it because it's going to be I'm going to terribly mispronounce it. Yeah, he got named to the squad to replace some of the other pitchers who either didn't want to take part or were going to screw up their turns in their team's rotation if they pitched in the All-Star game or whatever. And of course, there was controversy about
I spent this weekend with Ed Stark,
guy.
who's a huge Phillies fan, and one of the Phillies is one of those people that didn't get the nod, and he had some very strong opinions on that.
Yes, there were actually a couple of pitchers on the Phillies whose numbers this year could certainly have earned them a spot on the team, but again, is the Brewers pitcher. He's 4-1. He's young. He's tall. He's hot in the press right now. Because he's 6'7", and he throws 100 miles an hour. 3 or 4 different pitches, and he's an up and coming star. So you put him in the All-Star game over somebody, and multiple people who might technically have better numbers, but ESPN's not talking about those guys, So.
All right. That eye glow is going to take some fooling around, and we're closing in on 3 hours. So I'm going to say, this is where I will finish this one off screen and post it to folks who who subscribe to 50 Years in the Dungeon.substack.com. They will get to see it first.
Do that.
And then, of course, I've got some of the others I need to release publicly. Eventually, everyone will get to see it. But it's the folks who are friends of the show that get to see it first. Mizorowski. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, he's good. He's good.
I actually have Mizorowski on one of my fantasy teams. Yeah. I grabbed him.
All right. We'll come back to this view. Just me and Dale's icon. Dale, thank you for... I'm going to take my glove off. Thank you for hanging out with me for another couple of hours. Chatting, having fun.
Thanks again very much for the invitation. It's always wonderful to get to spend 2 or 3 hours with my buddy Stan, even though he's 1,500, 2,000 miles away. It's like we're in the same room.
It's like old times.
And everybody it's always very gratifying to interact with you guys as well. Go ahead, Stan.
Go ahead. Oh yeah. No, thanks to Chris, Andrew, and Michael in chat, Michael Palin, who were here the whole time. Lots of other people popped in and out, surreptitious, and Dale Donovan, he visited for a while. Cindy Robertson, Lester Smith, Eustaquio, who had an interesting question along the way. Yeah, a really fun night. Before I log you out, Dale, is there anything going on? I know you aren't doing a lot of stuff, but is there anything going on in your world that you want to plug or point people towards?
Not right now. Not anything that I can probably reveal at this time. But maybe in the relatively near future, I might be able to give you a little bit of news. Other than that, I just want to say thanks again for having me, everybody. I greatly enjoy our time together.
Yeah, I'm going to start. I still got some more work in progress, as you know, everyone could see at the start. There's still a bunch of unfinished pieces, but I'm also going to start putting in some shows where I do new pieces and have full-on interviews, as opposed to open chat, open question night. So there may be one as soon as the week of Gen Con. Unclear on that. There's my mysterious hint. But I think next week I'm going to have Jeff Quick back on. He's always fun to hang out with.
And he's got that buttery smooth voice too.
Oh, he's got a radio voice.
Yes, he does.
Unlike me, who has a face that was made for radio.
You and me both, buddy.
Yeah.
Why do you think I don't have my camera?
Yeah, well, I made the show, so I don't have any choice. Yeah. All right, so hold on a second, Dale. I'll do an outro, and then you and I can say goodnight. There we go. Another great evening of drawing, hanging out with a buddy, chatting with y'all, and answering questions, telling stories. I know we between Superman and baseball, we spent a lot of time not talking about games, but we talked a lot about games too. As I said before, 50 Years in the Dungeon.substack.com is the newsletter for this show. I also have a Patreon, patreon.com/Stanex. And if you go and join there's a free level you can join. But if you want to join at one of the, I think the lowest level is like $5 a month, $3 or $5 a month. You get extra behind the scenes stuff, and it helps to allow me to afford to spend more time doing projects like this. And I'm certainly trying to do more and more of that. Yeah, so tell your friends. Come on, join the network, join the fun. And if you have a few extra simoleons, consider maybe sharing them with me. Take one latte a month. It's like I said, hey, will you buy me a latte? I'll buy it in the form of Patreon, and then we all get what we want. Or is that too greedy? No, that's what it should be. All right, so thank you, everyone. I will be back tomorrow with a new episode of Random Encounters, and then I'll be back next week with a new work in progress show. So I hope that you will join me for both of those. Oh, also Friday night will be a new episode of The Sumo Show. So if you go to thesumoshow.com, that'll take you to our YouTube channel. And my friend and co-host Troy and I will be talking about the ongoing Nagoya Basho, which is in its first week right now. And if none of that means anything to you, come and listen. It's a show for beginners and longtime fans alike. I do love me some sumo. All right, that's it. Everyone, take care, be well, and I'll see you soon. Bye.